Welcome back, my friends, to AA Recovery Interviews. I'm your host, Howard Al, and I'm an alcoholic. Sober since January 1st, 1988, one day at a time. I'm grateful you've joined us. AA Recovery Interviews is the podcast where Alcoholics Anonymous members from around the world share their timeless and extraordinary stories of experience, strength, and hope. Each conversation is a powerful testimony to the life-changing effectiveness of AA. You'll hear what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now from more than 200 voices representing a broad cross-section of our fellowship. If you're struggling, if someone you know and love is struggling, or if you simply want to deepen and protect your own sobriety, these interviews offer real identification and real hope. I invite you to listen with an open mind and a willing heart. And if what you hear strengthens your recovery, please share this podcast. Leave a rating or review wherever you get your podcasts, and help carry this message to the alcoholic who still suffers. Before we start this week's episode of AA Recovery Interviews, I have a few personal words I'd like to say. First, I want to thank the hundreds of thousands of listeners throughout the world for joining me each week for the past 5 years to hear the inspirational, uplifting, and unforgettable stories of our AA fellowship. Producing a weekly podcast every week for the past 5 years has been both a blessing and a service dream come true. But, as many of you may know, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the last few years. The additional time necessary to cope with the disease on a daily basis has eaten up the time I spent with the podcast. Wanting to make sure that you, my listeners, and AA fellows have the highest quality listening experience, I've realized that continuing a weekly podcast is untenable going forward. Therefore, starting with my next podcast release on Wednesday, March 26th, I will in future release one podcast every 2 weeks. That will allow more than enough time to spend with my family, sponsees, and daily AA meetings. I am grateful for your understanding and support, and look forward to your continued listening. My guest on today's show is Craig S., a man I've known for years at a noon meeting I've attended for more than 3 decades. Craig came into AA later in life, getting sober at age 63. For years, he appeared to manage his drinking while building a highly successful business and providing a rich lifestyle for his family. But alcoholism is patient and progressive. As control slipped and cocaine entered the picture, the consequences grew harder to ignore. Anxiety mounted, relationships suffered, the very abilities that built his success began to erode. In a courageous moment of clarity, Craig walked into an AA meeting and asked for help. He found a strong sponsor, committed himself to the work, and has built nearly 5 years of solid sobriety, working with newcomers and living the principles that once saved his own life. This is a compelling story of later-in-life surrender, willingness, and transformation. So settle in, listen closely, and let hope do its quiet work. I'm honored to introduce my friend and AA brother, Craig S.
I'm Craig, alcoholic.
Hi, Craig. We're all really trained to respond to that. It's wonderful that people are that friendly with the hello when you're new in the program.
Yes, it is.
When you first came into AA and very first sat in a meeting and people said hi, what did you think of that? How did that make you feel when you heard people doing that the very first time?
A little uncomfortable, but also I recognized I felt the welcoming.
Yeah.
I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the fact that people were welcoming.
Yeah.
And I've become that way.
It's important, I think. When I came in the very first time and they did that, all I could think of was Amway. Because as a teenager, I spent about 3 weeks one summer thinking I was going to get rich by selling Amway.
Yeah.
And they would have these little sales meetings where it was very, very rah-rah, and you'd say your name and everybody would say hi back. So
right. It's like walking into Buc-ee's nowadays. Isn't it? Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Buc-ee's.
Yeah, and you'd like to believe that everybody there is really happy to see you.
Yeah.
But as an AA, what are we looking for?
Sobriety, and I think it's a little more genuine in AA, for sure.
Yeah, it sure is. I really appreciate you doing this morning, and on a relatively short notice. Mm-hmm. You've been around now for, about 3-4 years?
A little over 4 years.
What's your sobriety date?
November 8th, 21.
Okay, so you're coming up on 5 years.
Yes, sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
when you were younger, let's say midlife, because
Okay.
you're on the older side at this time, about like me. When you thought about your life down the road, like years ago, 30, 40 years ago, thinking about the Craig today at your current
68.
68, what did you envision your life would be like once you got there?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm pretty much a traditionalist. I hope that I would be still happily married, a granddad, which I am 7 times over,
Yeah.
business, financially successful, with time to play and time to enjoy, and Howard, a lot of that's come true.
So coming in at 63, you had the opportunity for those things to come true before you, let's say, declared your alcoholism,
Yes.
and or sought help for it,
Uh-huh.
which is different than a lot of people who never get to experience that because they're too busy getting into trouble and everything else from the
Right.
actual alcoholism.
Right.
Something tells me you must have managed your life pretty well while you were drinking. Is that a fair statement?
Very fair statement.
Yeah.
I think that makes it somewhat harder to buy into this.
Yeah.
You tend to see, or I tended to see, the differences and not the similarities. As I would read the book, our book, or the stories, I would think to myself, I wasn't that bad. That's not that doesn't describe me. And I fortunately had a wonderful sponsor, John, and we worked long and hard on the doctor's opinion, and worked long and hard on step one. But having, like our first step, that my life is unmanageable, I would go, when I'm drinking, it's unmanageable, but...
When did you first give that thought about your life being unmanageable? Was there a certain time in your life or during the years before you got sober that an incident occurred or a time and place occurred in your life where you thought, I'm kind of having a problem with this?
Yeah.
What did that look like?
Well, to me, Howard, it was, to be very candid, it was the everyday drinking. And although I didn't get drunk or sloppy every day, to me the scary part came, and I didn't get hangovers. Tito's and I were good pals. But in the shower in the morning, I would think back on last night, and often I couldn't remember what we had for dinner. Or if the Astros were playing, even though I knew they were playing, and the wife and I watch it every night, I couldn't remember the game, and then the few times when I wouldn't have my normal 3, 4, 5, 6 drinks, my memory was perfectly clear. So in the last couple of years of my drinking, those incidents, in addition to some other times, but the regularity of that memory loss, and me being able to unquestionably identify it with my drinking. In other words, the few times when I wouldn't drink, the next morning my memory would be crystal clear. And so that's really scared me.
So you were able to put 2 and 2 together and get 5.
I was.
The clarity that occurred when you didn't drink versus the fogginess or whatever when you did.
Absolutely.
You couldn't. There's something about that you couldn't reconcile, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. It scared me.
I'll bet it did. Now, what you mentioned 5, 6, 7 drinks. Now, over a period of time, and for someone who doesn't always get drunk or always have hangovers, which it sounds like you were one of them. When all that went on, what was going on around you? Were other people noticing how much you were drinking, or was it pointed out to you, or did you wait to have the self-realization until you decided that you had a problem? I mean, did your wife say anything about it?
She definitely said something about the drinking and driving regularly.
Regularly, yeah.
Constantly.
Yeah.
And then there were times where I'd make that promise. Okay, I'm not going to drink. Like my normal was, 5:30ish. It's cocktail time, and I own the company. Nobody's going to say anything. We had a bar in there, and I'd pour me one, and I'd have my typical deal was to have 2, 3, and I'm talking the tumblers, not a little small glass. I'm talking the nice.
Now, when you say a bar, are we talking about a liquor cabinet, or are we talking about a stock bar?
No, it's not a full-blown stock bar, but there was a closet that had the handles of Tito's and other wines and stuff that I didn't mess with. Tito's was vodka was my deal. And
so you didn't mind your employees
hell no.
drinking?
No, I didn't mind. They'd get me for every occasion, birthdays, Christmas deals. Everybody got me Tito's, the handles of half gallons of Tito's, And friends and employees and colleagues and whatever. I handled my liquor pretty well for the most part. There were occasions. This is weird, Howard. I really disliked sloppy drunks.
Yeah.
And there's only one thing worse than a sloppy man, and that's a sloppy woman drunk.
Yeah.
And so you could literally count on 2 hands the times where I got stumbly or vulgar or whatever. I despised that, and I certainly despised it in me.
Yeah.
And when I did, those few occasions scared me, but not enough to get me to stop.
Now, you mentioned that you were driving after you'd been drinking.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everything else. Did you ever have any consequences or problems with that?
No, but boy, I was aware all the time. I had my spot behind the passenger seat where I could stuff my drink if I were to get pulled over. And I was much more conscious of my driving when I had been drinking, a hell of a lot more than now. I mean, now I'm on the phone, texting, and I'm a much worse driver, sober, because I have no fear of getting pulled over or anything.
Yeah, you get a text you can't quite read, and your eyes are off the road, and you're in trouble.
Or trying to fix the grammar or whatever.
There's all
but
that.
My wife would plead with me, and I'd make a promise to not drink and drive. She'd say, just wait till you get home and have your toddies out on our beautiful patio and enjoy our home, and just don't drink. And I'd go 2 or 3 days, and then I'd get on. I'm a grown goddamn man. I can have a drink when I want to have a drink. And, I'd go right back.
And you're about the 3rd or 4th person in the last 6 months who I've interviewed who actually led almost their entire adult life working, succeeding, raising families and everything else without the problem of alcoholism. And then at a certain age, in the 60s, I've had some even in the 70s, catch up with the fact that they are alcoholics. It's almost like they've been blessed with 2 different lives. One where they weren't necessarily deemed an alcoholic, either to themselves or the people around. Mm-hmm. And then the problems start, and then they become labeled, self-labeled or whatever, or thought of as an alcoholic, mm-hmm. perhaps a recovering one in AA, but an alcoholic nonetheless. Mm-hmm. So you've been able to experience both worlds, haven't you?
Yes, I have. It's one of the reasons that when you asked me to do this, that I felt very compelled to do it, because I think there's a certain contingency that's like me, and not that I'm special or that unique, but I have enjoyed a certain level of business success, but I've also been very blessed with a beautiful family. The women in my life, between my mom and my wife, have been wonderful. I've just been very blessed. I've been married 43 years, very happily. And
is your mother still alive?
no, she just passed about a year and a half ago.
Sorry.
And the church was full of Delta people. It was she had a great life.
Yeah.
And I was definitely the apple in her eye. She adored me.
So you were sober when she passed?
I was.
That's
I
right.
was. But she had mixed reviews about AA. Her second husband was an alcoholic and got sober. But that's another story. But my college years, I was introduced to cocaine. Cocaine and I never did well together. I didn't do it often, but every time I did it, it was a junkie. It was a terrible ordeal. And I would just hate myself and the drug. I called it satanic. And I would swear I'll never do that crap again. Ever. Every time I did it, it was an all-nighter. Scare the hell out of Laura, my wife.
Yeah,
Just
right.
scare her to death. So I came to AA a long time ago. You probably don't know this. When Delta was over at on Richmond, I went in there and I was beat up. I'd been out all night. I stunk, and it was terrible. And I walked in, and you talk about the welcoming. People did. They hugged me. I was.
How many years was that before you actually came in to stop once and for all?
I'm going to guess at 30 years ago.
30 years ago.
Long time ago.
Was that over the cocaine that drove you in?
Oh yeah, no doubt.
So you walked in with just a cocaine problem.
That's what I was telling myself. I was convinced that I wasn't alcoholic, but that this cocaine problem, and so but I did quit drinking for years without AA in order to never do that terrible drug again, and to honor my promise to my wife. And she had threatened me that one more time, and I was out, and the last time was terrible.
Just physically, or was it affecting your work, or what was happening?
I mean, I gave up my golf clubs for a rock. I mean, I was pathetic.
Yeah.
I'd been out all night, and I realized that the next morning was our daughter's first time to go to kindergarten on the school bus. And that's a big deal. And but I couldn't be around her to see her get on the school bus because I'd been out all night. And I had to watch her through the neighbor's backyard. I was, how pathetic. And that was enough to scare me. I ended up, I don't even know how I knew that Delta was there. Maybe I just called or something.
Sure.
But I ended up over at the Delta Club, and I hung around for a couple months, kind of crossing my fingers. Okay, I'm an alcoholic. But I didn't feel like I was. And so I quit the drinking for years to prevent me from ever going back to do that drug.
That's interesting.
And then I picked up drinking again. I mean, my kids never saw me drink through their school years.
How long of a hiatus was that?
I'm going to say about 12 years.
Really? And was no alcohol?
No
for 12
alcohol,
years?
none.
You took the liquor cabinet out of your workplace?
Oh, it was just none. I mean,
done it.
Yeah.
So you just up and quit on your own?
I did. For fear of losing my family, for fear of losing everything, that drug and again, Howard, it's crazy. I might have only done it once every 6 months.
Right.
And the reasons that I did it were fear-based. Something would be going on, business would be tanking, whatever, that scared the hell out of me. And I'd think about it, and I'd go down to the hood and start the little nightmare again. Certainly not a regular thing, but every single time I ever did it, it was disastrous.
You know, the way you did it sounds a little bass-ackwards, the way most people do it, where they will be using cocaine or another drugs, amphetamines, whatever it might be, and they're also drinking, and they start to blame everything on the drugs, so they stop doing the drugs, but they keep on drinking. Or, in the case of some people, they cut down on one, with the idea that the other one will cut down. That generally never works.
Yeah.
So you went ahead and you put the cocaine, the drugs, completely out of your life, but you also stopped drinking.
Because I could rationalize. I never did that cocaine without an alcohol buzz. Okay, And so I just said, in order to ensure that I would never do that drug again, I had to stop drinking totally.
Huh.
And I did. And
were you going to AA to do that, or you did that entirely on your own?
I was for a few months after that last cocaine episode. There was a few months that I went regularly to AA, got a sponsor, and a guy that you know well, and loved him to death, still do. But I felt like I was lying about the alcoholism. Like others, I felt like this is a drug issue and not an alcohol issue, although mine seemed to go together. I was willing to quit drinking, but I didn't stay with AA. That was a long time ago, and I'm not good with years, but a long time ago, 30-ish years ago. Quit for like about 12 or 13 years. And so those years were good. I mean, they were fine. But then I started drinking, and I drank like a normal person. And I never aspired, Howard, to be some teetotaler like my wife.
Right.
I never aspired to. I didn't ever want to just drink one.
Well, sometimes sobriety can also present itself as an attitude to the general world.
Yeah.
You know, I don't drink, and therefore I am superior or whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like when you're talking about drugs and alcohol and dual use, people who are using alcohol along with the drugs, that to stop using alcohol when you're stopping the drugs as well, first of all, I think it's incredibly hard to do.
Yes, it is.
And then you throw on top of that things like eating and smoking and other things that are still okay to do that might be filling some of the gap. But the way you did it, to just stop, the message I'm wondering whether people out there who are listening to this is, so this guy was able to stop, but he stopped the drugs, and then he stopped drinking to stay away from the drugs.
That's right.
I'm doing both drugs and alcohol. If I stop the drugs, will that desire to keep drinking go away, or will I have the willpower to keep, to stay sober now that I've gotten rid of the drugs? I may be overcomplicating it, but is that a frame of mind that you ever had?
To be honest, don't recall. I just recall that the need, the urgency for me to never do cocaine again was so powerful that I would do anything. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of fun drinking. I mean, I had a lot of fun. I didn't ever have a cocaine incident without having an alcohol buzz first. And so me and my little simple brain putting the two together, if I quit drinking, and I made a solemn promise to God and myself that when I started drinking again, which was several years later, if the idea, the romance of ever doing cocaine again crept in, that I would quit forever. Okay, and so it did not. I mean, the cocaine has been a thing of the past for a long, long time.
So that experiment worked.
However, my drinking became daily.
Yeah.
And I could not quit. After umpteen times, this is current, every day I would say, let's just not drink today, Craig. Let's just today, not 30 days, because I'd long since given up the dry January business.
So when you said you were out for 12 years, then how many years until your current sobriety date? How many years were there that you
I
started
knew you were going to ask me years. So I would say about 10 or 12.
10 or 12.
Of good solid drinking.
Okay, so you started drinking. How old were you when you started drinking?
When I started drinking at the very beginning?
Yeah, when you first, let's say
12 or 13.
12 or 13. That seems to be about the age that most people start. When you were a kid growing up, mm-hmm. if somebody said something about a person being an alcoholic, or if you saw something on TV or in day-to-day life where it came up that guy is an alcoholic, what was in your mind as a kid of what an alcoholic was?
Well, my stepdad he's a big old brute of a man, mm-hmm. and I'm not sure that I comprehended an alcoholic at 13, 14. I just remember he was a big old son of a bitch, and when he got drunk, you watch out.
Did you put the two together?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Because although he wasn't he didn't love kids, but he was cordial, sober, but tough. I mean, he never beat my mom, but would be cruel. And he and I went round and around a couple times. So again, I don't know that I really thought much about alcoholism. What I did see, and that had an impact on me, was that a very long-term impact was he finally did get sober, and ended up in AA. This is down in the Clear Lake area, and instead of coming back and being a decent, because my mom put up with a ton,
Yeah, I bet.
and when he got sober, instead of coming back and participating as a loving, responsible husband, he got married to AA and hung out at Denny's, smoking cigs and drinking coffee till shut down, till they closed it up. And so that gave me a bad taste of Alcoholics Anonymous as a early kid.
I'll bet.
But that didn't linger on. I didn't have any long-term resentment of AA. It was more a resentment towards him. You finally get freaking sober, and instead of paying attention to your family and being a decent guy, you're off every night.
Yeah. And there's a whole chapter in the big book about that.
There sure is.
So we know that happens, where people, they've spent most of their lives drinking and doing whatever else. They get sober, and suddenly all the vistas open up, and they lose track of the fact that spending time with AA means not spending time with the people who they supposedly got sober for.
That's correct.
And that's an enigma. How old were you when I'm assuming what your natural father was he around? Did your mom and him get divorced?
Yeah, they did. He
Okay. So
he left us when I was about 5.
Okay. So.
And he had a successful job. From all accounts, he was a great guy, a handsome dude.
Have you ever met him?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh yeah.
He
He didn't leave till about he didn't leave us until I was about 5 years old. So and he lived in Houston my whole life till he died, and that's a lot of my past. I had a great, wonderful childhood. My mother gave me plenty of love for 2 people, so I never longed for my dad or whatever. But he had a very successful job with an oil company here in Houston, and got laid off. And instead of going out and looking for a job, he'd put his suit on, like the men did in those days, and dressed up in his suit and every day, and then he'd go over on Bissonnette and spend the day in a dimly lit tavern, and instead of looking for a job. And that got old for my mom, and she booted him after a year or 2 of him not doing anything. So
was he drinking at that point?
Oh yeah.
So alcoholically, would you estimate? Or?
In hindsight, looking back, certainly, yeah. And Howard, the strange, the thing that I've surmised in my elder years here is that in hindsight, looking back, a lot of my drinking was fear-based. It was, God, I don't want to be like my dad, and I've got that DNA. I mean, could I ever walk just like he fell off the face of the planet? Yeah. He never saw me play a down of football, and he lived in the same city, or hit a baseball, or run a race in track, and sports was
That's tough.
My whole life. And he was never there, and I can't imagine that. But I also, deep down, always had this fear that I could be like him.
Yeah.
And not that he was some cruel person. He just fell off the face of the planet when he lost that job. And so I always was like, if I lose my business, that's my identity. That's who I am. I'm not educated.
So that's driven you all these years.
It has.
It's driven you to this.
But it also drove me with the alcohol.
Sure. So you were able to accommodate both.
Yeah.
And so that drive and that desire to not be like your dad,
Yeah.
in certain ways, actually paid off pretty well for you from the standpoint of the success and everything else.
Yeah.
And but you also mentioned a really cruel stepfather, and I wondered, when did he first come into your life?
Oh, early, when I'd say, let's see, how old are you when you go into third grade?
About 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah, we moved. My mom and he met, and he was he was a criminal defense attorney, and they dated less than a year and got married, and he wanted to move down to Clear Lake by the water, and we did. And so that was like 1964-ish. And so we were some of the early pioneers of the Clear Lake area, which was the greatest gift he ever gave me. I loved growing up there, had a great fun childhood. And you know, I've just had it was a great community. We all knew each other. Parents took care of all of us. It was great stuff.
How about behind the closed doors, though?
Yeah, behind closed doors, there was always seemed to be money problems and not violent, physically violent, but loud arguments, always centered around money, it seemed like. And
what kind of attitude did that give you towards money?
That's a great question. I made up my mind that I would never be poor, and early on. And so I actually started a business when I was a junior in high school. That's still my business today.
Wow.
50-something years later.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was a little painter, and I would paint your house for $400, labor and materials, sight unseen.
Huh.
I'd come, of course, I knew all the houses.
Yeah.
And by the time I went off to school, to college, I had 4 men working for me, and I was pretty driven by the idea that money was a necessary, I don't know if it was evil, but it was necessary.
Yeah.
And that had a substantial impact on me, and that nobody was going to give me anything. Right. Not that they didn't love me or care about me, they didn't have anything. I mean, I remember I had this car, my first car, a Cutlass, and I had spent like $400 on these tires, and big old fat tires, you know, and one, I had a blowout on one, and it was $40 to get it repaired or replaced. And I went to my mother and I said, oh, man, I need to borrow $40. And she said, we don't have it. And that car sat out there for a month. And so, I mean, I came to the conclusion early in my life that money was important, and that nobody was going to hand it to me. There would be no trust. There would be no wills. There would be, I either made it or didn't.
Your story is very similar to others that men to this day have had extraordinarily successful careers. Money-wise, they were ratcheted up way beyond anybody's expectations, and a lot of that drive to do that was to not ever be in the situation where you couldn't afford to be given $40 for a blowout tire.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, I think that way of living, that way of existing day to day, takes on the fear of losing it. And it's not so much attaining it, it's the fear of losing it that drives the drive. In your experience in your life, has it been the fear of losing as opposed to the striving to win? Which has been more dominant in your life?
Wow. Somewhere in that question, you got to throw at me pride and ego, because I had worked, achieved a certain level. My company became quite well known in the very affluent market in Houston, and for it to fail, that the fear of that was very real. Mm-hmm. And there was many times where I was hanging on by a shoestring, brother.
We'll be right back. If you're finding value in AA Recovery Interviews with Howard L., here's a way to take that experience even deeper into the very foundation of Alcoholics Anonymous itself. I'm proud to present my audiobook, Alcoholics Anonymous, the story of how more than 100 men have recovered from alcoholism. This is a complete, word-for-word, cover-to-cover reading of the first printing of the first edition, published in 1939. The book that started it all. For nearly 9 decades, the Big Book has transformed lives. With more than 39 million copies sold, it's widely recognized as one of the most influential books ever written in English. Now you can experience it in a powerful new way, through careful, respectful narration that makes the original text come alive. Whether you're commuting, walking, traveling, or sitting quietly with a cup of coffee, this audiobook allows you to absorb the message of recovery anytime, any place. It's steady, it's meaningful, it's immersive, and it belongs in every serious AA member's toolkit. And while you're checking out my audio Big Book, don't miss the companion volume I narrated, Lost Stories of the Big Book, 30 original stories missing from the 3rd and 4th editions of Alcoholics Anonymous. These are the original personal stories that were removed to make room for newer testimonials in later editions. Many AA members have never seen or heard them, yet their messages of surrender, transformation, and hope are just as powerful today as when they were first published. Lost Stories of the Big Book brings these forgotten voices back to life in a vivid, engaging format that will deepen your appreciation for AA's rich history. You can listen to a free sample on Audible, Amazon, or iTunes. It's also available in Kindle and paperback editions on Amazon if you'd like to read along. If you love AA, if you cherish the Big Book, if you want to enrich your program beyond meetings alone, these 2 audiobooks are not optional, they're essential. And now, we're back. Was your business being affected at that time by your drinking?
Oh, I don't know, Howard. It's just business, there's cycles, and I don't know that my drinking or not drinking, because along in there's those periods of sobriety, and I can't recall exactly, but I don't think that the economy of Houston cared much about my drinking or not. I mean, oil fell out the bottom, economy sucked, even the wealthy weren't painting their homes,
right?
Or doing their buildings or whatever. So the answer is honestly I don't know, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
It wasn't more personal. My drinking affected my personal life more than my business life.
So somewhere along the way, you were able to juggle both and continue to drink. Time goes on. You had that period of sobriety.
Yeah.
Let's call it sobriety. If you weren't getting the gifts of sobriety, I like to think of it as sobriety. You were so dry, but maybe not getting the gifts that you should be given when you do something that monumental. So the years go on. Did you give thought to what you were going to do when you retired or when you got to be the age that you are now? Because you haven't yet retired, have you?
No.
Okay.
Close.
So let's say within the last 5 years, what happened in the lead up to your desire to stop drinking this time, once and for all?
Well, as you probably heard me say, I fought long and hard to not be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
To not have to, because I knew what AA was, and it was not controlled drinking.
Yeah.
And it was not a temporary thing. And
so did you give up on other solutions when that realization hit you?
I didn't have, you mean other solutions insofar as sobriety?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to get sober and you didn't think AA was the way to do it, was from that you decided that it wouldn't be possible without it, or did you just not approach other solutions to
I approached them, I just wasn't successful. I tried every which way but Sunday to control drinking, to stop for January, and because having done it before,
for 12 years,
I was absolutely certain that I had the wherewithal, the internal wherewithal to do it, to get a handle on drinking and to not drink every day. And when the memory loss started, and I was like, oh, this is for real, dude. I mean, you're not 20 something or 30 something anymore, and it's affecting your brain. And so let's do something about it. And Howard, it wouldn't last. I mean, it wouldn't last 3 days, and I'm right back at it. And again, not getting sloppy. I just lacked the ability to quit drinking for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
And every time I drank, instead of drinking just one or two, good-sized tumbler of Tito's, I drank 4, 5, 6, 7.
So you were the guy that they talk about in the big book. If you think you're not an alcoholic, try some controlled drinking.
Absolutely.
Or try stopping entirely, and then you'll see. But it's not the fact that you stopped; it's will you start again.
Yeah.
That often is the same.
And I read that part so many times about I think it's on 21, about the heavy drinker.
Right.
And I would say, that's me. I'm the heavy drinker. And if I had to, I could quit.
That lets you off the hook pretty easily.
It does. And so I'm again looking at trying to find the differences. So I fought coming in to AA. I fought a valiant fight. I just lost.
Now, were you one of those guys, Craig, that a lot of people like to be given some credit, especially when they're new in the program and wanting to fit? They're with people, contemporaries around their age, around maybe their position in business or their lives at that point. Were you one of those guys who would say, I'm sober 3 years, but I had 12 years at one time, and did you ever refer to that as or do you leave that?
I don't even bring it up in here. In these,
because that's the first time I've heard you really talk about that.
I don't talk about it.
So there's nothing to be proud of.
No, I'm ashamed of it. That's
really?
that. Oh, I'm like when you ask me to do this, I'm like, God, I hope my kids don't hear it. Now they're grown kids now, but still.
Why is that though? I mean, you didn't drink for 12 years. That's something to be pretty grateful for.
Yeah, but I did.
In your kids' eyes, let's say. They grew up with a dad who didn't drink and had all the problems that you could have had.
I'm not ashamed of that. I'm ashamed of the cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when I say I was a junkie, again, every time I did that crap, every time, it was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare. I was back and forth, and and writing hot checks or writing checks, and whatever. Just it was terrible, and that's what I'm ashamed of.
Yeah, I get that, and I guess there is, especially when you mentioned earlier about your ego and how big it could get and how charged up it could be, and then your ego runs smack dab into that shame.
Yes.
I'm wondering if your ego knows what to do with that.
That's a very valid question, and I have through working with my sponsor, I I identified, that was what John calls an epiphany. I'm driving down 610 one night, and I'm listening to, and by the way, when I came in this time, I had like 6 weeks, and I know you know my sponsor well, and I had like 6 weeks, and I'm coming in every day, and I'm doing the deal.
Sure.
And I had quit smoking. I had quit smoking a few months before, and then I had quit drinking, and I had quit drinking for like 6 weeks, and I'm all in with AA. And then one day, at my office, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I just said, F it. I am sick and tired of being a quitter and quitting. I'm tired of this. It's overwhelming. And I went to the liquor store and I bought a fifth, not a half gallon. I bought a fifth of Tito's and a pack of Marlboro. And I sat at my desk and I got a good buzz, smoked a couple ciggies, and went, that's me. And then
exactly when was that? Was that
about 4.5 years ago.
So that was like right near your sobriety date.
Yeah, that was preceding my real sobriety date. And I did it exactly the same thing the next day. Even though I threw away the pack of cigarettes, threw away the remainder of the fifth, which there wasn't that much, threw them away, and then the next day I went back to the same liquor store, did the same thing, just repeat. And I said, you're right back there doing it again. So I came in, made that admission, got a new desire chip, and truly surrendered at that point. I said, this has got me.
I think I was this club the club you came
Oh,
in?
yeah.
Okay, because I remember that I think I was there that day.
Yeah.
And from the first time I think you introduced yourself through several months, my perception was you were a really angry guy. You seemed really kind of pissed off.
Well, I certainly had lost, I've said often that I perceived AA, me getting sober, as punishment for not being able to do something about my drinking. Like I could easily admit that I was addicted to smoking, addicted to nicotine. But the idea that I, of all people, can't control this damn drinking, it did piss me off. And so coming to AA, because that was the consequence when I would say, let's not drink. The consequence that I would tell myself, or you're going to end up in AA. And I did.
You're gonna end up in jail. I mean, it sounds almost the same kind of thing. So, when you had that epiphany or whatever.
I didn't tell you about that. I'm listening to Drop the Rock, Sandy Beach's Drop the Rock, and I was really struggling with the idea of quitting for good, quitting forever, and all of that, and how all my buddies, all my people, golf club, all my people were going to perceive this, and I was consumed with that, and I heard Sandy Beach talking about our pride and our ego, and that was the block. And I had read A New Pair of Glasses from Chuck C, and he was saying the same thing, that barrier to contented sobriety, and to getting, for me, to get what you and others in here had, and that was joy and serenity in sobriety, which was kind of inconceivable to me. It was the pride and ego that was the block, and I had what John calls an epiphany, and I recognized it, and I admitted it, and I started truly working on that element, and the scales fell off, and I fell in love with this deal out of it.
So you were living with that little dash in between.
Yeah.
We admitted we were powerless over alcohol. You were living over there knowing that you were powerless at that point, but what was eating your lunch was the fact that you didn't quite see where you couldn't manage your life.
Well, no question. I'm looking at it, arguing with it, going, I got 50 employees, I got a beautiful wife, I got a couple of I got this and that and this and that going on,
Yeah.
and you want me to admit that I'm some insane, unmanageable, blah, 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 some mental defect, and
What did John tell you about that?
Oh, he, and I think you've heard the story. I would say, he'd say, "Are you done?" And I'd go, "I am now." And he'd go, "Forever." And I'm like, "Forever." I could still envision me on this ranch, my own little 150-acre ranch, and a nice little house that I've built, and I've got me a couple of longhorns and some horses, and I'm working. I get out there and I work my butt off all day in the sun, and I'm all out there, and it's sunset, and here I'm sitting on my balcony, my boots propped up, having a Tito's and a Marlboro. Still sounds good. And he'd go, "Well, Craig, you don't have a ranch, and you don't have any longhorns, and you don't have any horses. What are you worried about?
Yeah.
Let's talk about today."
Yeah.
And so, John's wonderful. He's one of the greatest blessings in my life.
Yeah, and I've known him for a very long time.
I know you have.
And his sponsor was a very good friend of mine.
With a similar name.
It was the exact same name. And what's interesting about it is, unlike a lot of people who talk about their sponsor but never mention their name, John talks about, and this is, his sponsor is the late sponsor. He passed away several years ago, but his name was Howard also.
Yep.
But whenever we would be in the same room together, the other Howard J, and me, when someone would talk about Howard, they'd say, "Which Howard?" And there was always that discussion. But these days, when he talks about his sponsor, he always calls him by name somewhere in his share.
Oh, I know he does.
And people in the room who didn't know that Howard and didn't know the relationship John had will all look over at me. But the cool thing about it is, the things that he's saying about his sponsor are all really strong and powerful and complimentary. So I'm sitting there thinking, let them think what they like. but
you'll take the credit.
Yeah, and and people will come up to me and say, "Oh, wow, it's amazing that you did that with John." I said, "Well, I'd like to claim credit for it, but it was Howard J.
And I'm so sorry I didn't get to meet him.
Yeah, he had a great sense of humor and was he was a beautiful man.
Yeah.
But we're going to be wrapping up here before too much longer, Craig. I wanted to ask you about your early days in the program, and was there ever a point within the first couple of months or whatever where you were being pulled away, or that you had contrary thoughts about what this was all going to mean? And kind of as a follow-up built into that question, did you gain a sense of just how much work this was going to be when you came in, and what did you think about that?
Well, after my little slip, I realized that the way I look at it, Howard, is everybody that in the Delta Club and that noon group, that every man and woman, by the way, that I admired and I wanted what they had. Every one of them were what I call all in. Mm-hmm. And I came to the very, very early, right after that slip, this is going to be an all-in deal for Craig.
Yeah.
It's not going to be half-ass, and I don't half-ass well. And I had to come to terms with the fact that you're either going to be all in and successful with this sobriety business, or you're not. I mean, it was a very pointed question that I had to make and come to the conclusion myself, and I've always had a strong faith, and I felt that the Lord was pushing me in this direction, and that by me making that decision, and I'm so grateful that I did, and that to get this new life at well, 63, but now 68. It was what does John call it? Serendipitous.
Yeah.
It was such a pleasant surprise gift, and the joy of working with other men now. I can't tell you how much I love it.
And I want to talk about that service
Yeah.
work as well as the spiritual part of your program. I wondered, were there ever times during your sobriety, during the past 3.5, almost 5 years,
Yeah.
4.5, almost 5 years, were there ever any times that you were working on something within the program that you thought, because of all your experience and success in the outside world, your ability to be able to deal with that issue within your program should be easier, or you shouldn't have to be facing this because you were so successful in other things, that why can't you seem to get this other thing? Did that ever come up for you?
Well, I think that that the idea that one might have of what an alcoholic looks like,
Right.
I think that idea has to be smashed. We can, as you know, we can get off that elevator at any level.
Yeah.
And because I wasn't a morning drinker, or I would get the shakes after noon or whatever, because I didn't have that, doesn't make me any less of an alcoholic or whatever.
Sure.
But I do think that the people that have had what we call the gift of desperation, they're so beat up. They're it's kind of like me on the cocaine day. I mean, it kicked my ass so thoroughly. It was unbelievable, just from one night, much less an extended period. I think that makes it hard. Like, I have a couple sponsees, and the reason they were attracted to me as a sponsor was because they saw similarities in me out in the real world.
Yeah.
But that I got this deal, and I think those people that have the gift of desperation, we have a guy in here that says one day he hit his knees and prayed to a God that he didn't even believe in, and that obsession was removed forever. It's never come back. Mm-hmm. That's not my experience, Howard.
Yeah.
And I love my higher power. I love my God, and I believe totally in Him. But I did not. That obsession with me was not just poof, removed and to never come back. My sobriety depends, at least from my perspective, my sobriety depends on a very active, all-in service, everyday type deal.
What kind of connections? And I feel the same way whenever I'm thinking about the people I sponsor and befriend in the program. To what degree have those sponsor-sponsee relationships, to what degree have they affected your success in the program? Would you call them cornerstones?
Oh, that's a great question. I used to marvel at when I'd sit in this very room with my sponsor, and we'd go on for hours, and every week, and conversation. And I used to just like, God, thank you. And he'd go, Craig, quit thanking me. I love doing this. And I'm like, really? I mean, you love doing this at 20 years, And then I ultimately got to experience the same thing. As we say sometimes, I saw the light go off on a man that I'd been working with for 5 or 6 months, and recognizing that I'm just a channel, and recognizing that it's not me, but seeing that light truly, while he's doing his step 5, and seeing just that glow. I mean, how has it affected my sobriety? It's unbelievable. I can't even explain it. It's such a powerful, what's the word I'm looking for? Such a powerful and profound substantiation of this program.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it too. And working with other people, and especially when it's, I don't even know if we'd call it successful, let's say effective, okay?
Yeah.
the thing about that is, I think somewhere along the way, we realize that we are saying things that, where do they come from?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
or you know, somewhere in our conversation with our own sponsor will come out the assurance that now we get it. You know, and
Yeah.
that came from working with people who didn't yet get it, and somehow it came out. But it seems to me that somewhere along the way we get that connection that working with others is a God-directed effort, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not us that is doing it.
It is.
It's being God-directed.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it's easy to separate when you say these are the things you have to do to stay sober and live an enriched life. You need to pray, and you need to work the steps, and you need to sponsor other people, almost as if they're independent of each other. But the fact that I've noticed over the years is the men that I've sponsored, and some of these guys I've sponsored for well over 30 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of them still call me when things are going on in their life. So I know that the relationship there is strong. But every now and then I'll get off the phone with one of them and just say, thank you, God.
Yeah.
Because the same feeling that I had 30 plus 38, well, I didn't get my first sponsee till about 37,
Wow.
36, 37 years ago. But I would say, thank you, God, because I didn't know what to say.
I know.
And my sponsor would always tell me,
It's-
before you sit down with a sponsee, ask God to put the right words into your mouth and you know, put on your listening ears.
That's right.
And know that the reason you're sober and contentedly sober is because of the work that you're doing with this man and other people. How does that make you feel whenever you get in that frame of mind with the guys you deal with?
It's just like you. I just ask for the Holy Spirit to be in this room, to be in this place,
Yeah.
and to guide me and to give me. You know, I'm a talker,
Yeah.
and I gotta, ask the Lord to just let me be a channel, and that 11th step prayer, that just let me be a channel, and be able to lovingly. And there's guys, and I always tell my sponsees, we're basically going through a training process for you to guide other men, and because John was unequivocal about my having, at the end of the step work, having an obligation, a responsibility to pass this along. He didn't leave any ifs, ands, and buts, and nor do I. I mean, and my sponsees that are now sponsoring other men, it's one of the great joys of this gig that we do.
Yeah, and what's beautiful about what you're saying is that is you've come to that realization relatively early. Some guys don't get to that realization until quite a bit later, and they look back and then they see it. But it sounds to me like you have been, I think, especially since your sponsorship by John.
Yeah.
And he still is your sponsor.
Oh yeah.
So
no doubt.
So your sponsorship by John has created an environment in which you know the fruits of your involvement are going to grow out of what you're doing, and that you know, when he tells you go in there and say a prayer before you start working with these guys, or you know, those are the things that really work, and they have a profound effect on our lives. And then
And Howard, I have failed miserably if I don't impress on my sponsees how joyful it is and how rewarding it is to bring another man through those steps. And we don't haul ass through them. I mean, we're talking 10, 11 months to go through the steps. As John did with me, I do with my guys.
Yeah.
But I have failed, in my opinion, or in my own view, if I haven't illustrated to my sponsees, this is the gift. This is what we get to do.
Yeah.
It's not an obligation. It is, but it's not something that I dread or that's a chore. It's you don't have to thank me for the time. It's like you do this because you love it, and you're wonderful at it, but you do it because you love it.
Yeah.
It's you giving back, right?
Right, and if even one person is helped,
That's right.
It's all worth it, and that we know.
No doubt.
It sounds to me like the approach that you've got is working pretty well.
I think
You seem
so.
to be a pretty level-headed, happy guy most days, and a lot of the ways that I can sense the dedication that you have to this program is by watching your sponsees and
Yeah.
by watching the sponsees that those sponsees have, and being able to kind of trace the lineage back, and boom, there's Howard.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
Howard J. because of John's relationship.
No doubt.
And so some of the things I'm seeing, your guys who are 2 to 3 levels beyond you, is that it goes back to the same.
Isn't that incredible?
It is. Yeah.
And by the way, that legacy is, excuse me, that legacy is very important to me and John.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
And it a tribute to Howard. I did send him an email.
Yeah.
In the late, but he didn't know me from Adam.
Right.
Where does he live?
He lived in the Philippines.
In the Philippines. That's right. But no, that legacy. I've got a picture in my office of John, me, Richard. There's several, and there's about 8 of us, and it's John's lineage, and then it's mine, and so it's super cool. I mean, what a gift, and Howard, I can't conclude without saying what a gift that I got in my 60s, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I was, a lot of these guys that have got you and Roe and these Tom, you guys got 30, 40 years. Man, you had to start when you're in your 20s or 30s.
Well, yeah, but it's real easy to lose sight of the fact that you may not have been an alcoholic all along. You may have been a person who could control their drinking. You stopped for 12 years.
Yeah.
The alcoholism didn't start to really eat away at your life until a certain point.
That's right. That's right.
I found AA when I did because it's when I needed it.
That's right.
I was just about ready to turn 31 whenever it was that I caught it. But I could have kept drinking and using for years and years after. The fact that I haven't is because I found a way to acknowledge the enrichment of my life that AA has sustained for me for so many years now. And that if it wasn't enriching my life, if the only thing to sobriety was just not drinking, then to me it wouldn't have been enough. I would have been shortchanged. But it's all the other stuff, like George J. says, the lanyap, that's added. And it makes a big difference. Well, this has been a wonderful opportunity. I love the fact that you and I have spent this amount of time together. Helps me to get to know you. I've seen you and admired you and knew that I wanted to have you do this because there are going to be people out there, especially maybe in the age group that you and I are both in. Actually, I'm older than you, but who will hear this and maybe, hope will spring from that experience. And
I hope so.
So I would just ask you, kind of as a final thing, if you could go back. No, I'm not going to say that because you weren't really involved to the same extent that some people are there their whole life, and then they get to AA. They're drunk, then they get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yours took a little different path, but you wound up at the same spot.
Yeah.
In AA, being a man of service, being a man of God, being a guy who just is a really good guy, and there's no debating that fact. What would you say to people who are looking at AA from from off stage or from a distance? They don't know whether or not it's something they want to do. They've been able to drink most of their adult lives. They're now in their 50s or 60s. Maybe they're retired. What do you say to that person who says, I don't know if this would really be good for me or whether it would help me? What do you say to people, your contemporaries, about they've been successful drinking so long, why go into AA?
Well, they might be somewhat. I'm thinking of certain people, and although I love AA and I'm very proud. I make no. I don't hide my anonymity. For me is nothing. I'm not a walking billboard, but I'm not ashamed of it at all.
Sure.
And there are several of my friends. I've been blessed with a good amount of friends, and several of them. All of them know what I'm doing, and hopefully I'm an example to them that you can. It's never too late, and if the alcohol is doing to you what it was doing to me, and you're concerned about it, don't be afraid of this deal. it's a gift, and I got it at 63 years old, and so there's a couple that are leaning towards it, but again, as you know, it's not it's attraction, it's not promotion. So I'm not peddling it, but I'm there if they should need me.
Well, and Bill Wilson even said that we're not a secret society. We need to maintain the idea of anonymity, but anonymity was never meant to be a block to people coming into the program. So
and it's changed since Bill W.'s time and Dr. Bob. I mean, we know a little bit more. Look at all these young guys in here, these 40-something-year-olds that are getting this deal and probably saving their family life
that's
as a result.
To watch.
Isn't it great? I just love it.
It really is. And in doing all of the podcasts that I've done and all the interviews that I've done, a lot of them have been with people with substantial amounts of sobriety. Mm-hmm. Some of them have been with people with a limited amount, 2-3 years.
Yeah.
The people in between, there are not that many of them around that I go to meetings with, and that's how I usually will choose people, or the Zoom meetings when we're talking about people around the world. But I think the dedication and commitment that you have to the program shows, and you wear it well.
Well, thank you.
And you wear it like a loose garment, which I think is really cool. My hope and prayer for you is that you continue to find your life enriched by your higher power's use of you in just daily living and in other people's lives, because you are affecting other people's lives. And you and I won't know, probably won't ever be aware, but what we've done today is going to have an impact somewhere, someplace, sometime. Yeah. We won't know about it. And that's the greatest blessing of all, as far as I'm concerned. I want to thank you for doing this.
Thank you for your service and what you mean to the greater Houston area. You're a cornerstone, and I appreciate it. I know a lot of people appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate doing it. Well, my friends, that's a wrap for today's episode of AA Recovery Interviews. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed AA Recovery Interviews, will you please tell others how to listen to it? It's another helping hand we can all extend to alcoholics everywhere. If you want to contact me directly with any comments, questions, or suggestions, simply email howard@aarecoveryinterviews.com. By the way, this podcast strictly adheres to AA's 12 traditions and all General Service Office guidelines for safeguarding anonymity online. I pay all production costs. AA Recovery Interviews and my guests do not speak for or represent AA at large. This podcast is simply my way of giving back to AA that which has been so freely given to me. The next episode of AA Recovery Interviews is on the way, so keep coming back. It'll be here soon.